On the anniversary of Japan's World War II surrender, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe skipped a visit to the controversial Yasukuni Shrine, but still sent a ritual donation. What does that say about the China-Japan relationship at the moment? And China-Brazil relations reached a new milestone on Wednesday as Brazilians celebrate the first National Chinese Immigration Day. What's the story behind that? Welcome to The Point, live from Beijing. I'm Liu Xin. August the 15th marks the surrender of Imperial Japan in World War II in 1945. On Wednesday, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe sent a ritual donation to the war-linked Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo. The shrine honors the war dead, including 14 Class A convicted war criminals, and is considered a symbol of Japan's past militarism. The Prime Minister visited the shrine in person in December 2013, a year after the Japanese government so-called nationalized the disputed Diaoyu Island in the East China Sea. Now, Beijing-Tokyo relations have been tense ever since, although signs have emerged of warming ties in recent months. So, is Prime Minister Abe sending a message to Beijing by not visiting the shrine in person this time, especially as China and Japan just celebrated the 40th anniversary of the signing of the China-Japan Treaty of Peace and Friendship on Sunday? And have the political differences distanced the people of the two countries? Joining me for the discussion are Joaquin Gallego, Professor of History at Macalester College in Minnesota in the U.S., and from Florida, Cookie Chu, Professor of Media and Cultural Studies at Sophia University in Tokyo. Welcome to both of you. Professor Tam, let me go to you first. When Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited the shrine back in 2013, he was strongly condemned by China and South Korea, as well as by the U.S., who said at the time that it was disappointed with Abe's decision. In fact, as I mentioned, visits and ritual offerings made in person or by proxy to the shrine by Japanese leaders and officials have always sparked strong criticism from these countries. But why did Prime Minister Abe this time still decide to send a ritual donation on the anniversary, given the detente of China-Japan relations, but he didn't go in person this time?
Oh, well, yes, that's because the shrine stands a very special position in the history of Japan. It was established in the early Meiji period, back in the 1870s, to honor those war dead for Japan, and now the shrine had no problem until 1978, when the shrine secretly enshrined the 14 Class A criminals, war criminals, into the shrine, and so that became a problem. And since 1978, in fact, even the Japanese emperor has not visited the shrine anymore. He used to visit the shrine every year before 1978, but after 1978, no more. And so when Prime Minister Abe visited the shrine, that would, really cause a sensational response, not only from China and Korea, but also, I think, from Japan itself too.
Professor Chu, on Sunday, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe exchanged congratulatory messages on the signing, on the 40th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty on Peace and Friendship between the two countries.
Oh, okay.
And also speaking highly of Premier Li's visit to Japan in May while attending the 7th China-Japan-South Korea leaders meeting. Abe said he is looking forward to visiting Beijing this year and lifting bilateral ties to a new stage of development. So given what we talked about just now, his gesture this year of not visiting the shrine personally, and what he said looking forward to the development of Sino-Japanese ties, from your observation, where is Sino-Japanese ties? Where do Sino-Japanese ties stand at this moment, and what are the chances for relations to go forward on a steady, maybe slow pace?
Well, the most important thing that we need to consider is that this visitation to the Yasukuni Shrine, or the donation to the Yasukuni Shrine, is actually related more to the domestic politics. Even though there's on the international stage, Japan can actually try to present itself as a global leader in partnershiping with China. At the same time, Abe Shinzo has to placate its domestic, especially the conservative and right-wingers, regarding this issue. So this is something that we do have to consider. And also at the same time, the world has to be aware of Abe Shinzo's, in some ways, a performative donation to Yasukuni Shrine when it comes to this issue.
Mm-hmm. Now, from our understanding, the Japanese government's attitude toward the World War II history has pretty much remained the same. And for countries in Eastern Asia, that's really a sticking point. And a lot of my past discussions on this program concerning Japan has always been its attitude, the fact that, or what we believe is the fact that Japan or Japanese right-wing politicians refusing to acknowledge what they did and the kind of pain they inflicted on countries in Eastern Asia, such as China and South Korea. So, Professor Tam, are we seeing Japan
Yes.
and China, or politicians in Japan and China, willing to move forward their relationship in a cautious manner, despite the persistent difference they hold on their attitude toward that piece of history? Is that what we're seeing at this moment?
Well, yes, I am a little bit optimistic about this because I think, throughout history, Sino-Japanese friendship has been the mainstream in this, for about 2,000 years or so. The war only happened, say, in the last century, and so I think the politicians in Japan and China are usually looking forward. And so I am, based on this, I think that's quite, we can look forward to the future friendship, normalized friendship again.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Professor Chu, what's your observation? How do you think the two countries have been able to shelve their differences for now and seek new space for rapprochement vis-a-vis the kind of similar situation between Japan and South Korea?
Well, first of all, as long as there's an economic mutual beneficial relationship, Japan and China will definitely be able to move forward. I completely agree with Professor Tam on that issue, and I am more optimistic in that regard. However, at the same time, we are all aware of the lingering, what we can call in some ways a nationalistic sentiment regarding the wartime historical past that still needs to be resolved. So, at the same time, I am optimistic, and I do see this also regarding South Korea and Japan's relationship as well. Mm-hmm. Yet at the same time, there has to be issues regarding the historical past that has to still be discussed and negotiated.
Right, right. Professor Tan, looking now into the near future, what will be the key for both sides for the volatile improvement of relations between China and Japan, so that this momentum that have been carefully fostered up to now can really gain strength and become real force to push bilateral ties forward?
Yes, I think first and foremost, Japan should really take responsibility for the aggressive war in China and other parts of Asia. And the Japanese government has yet to truly, sincerely apologize to the peoples, to the victims of the war. And we are still waiting for that. And if Japan is willing to do that, I mean the Japanese, say, Diet and the Prime Minister, the Emperor should really offer a truly sincere apology to the people, and then also work out some other programs to amend, the gap between the two countries. Then there will be a great future.
Despite the differences and despite some uncertainties, China and Japan have actually had a good rapport in areas of culture and sports. And I must mention also the younger generations here in China are actually quite fond of things Japanese. For instance, they like to learn Japanese language, they love Japanese anime, Japanese movies, Japanese cosplay. So Professor Tan, how can you explain, how do you understand the younger generation's mentality towards Japan? On the one hand, many of them, you know, are reminded of that history during the Second World War, but on the other hand, they also look up to this country that is to the east of their home country.
Well, I think yes, I realize that yes, currently the younger generation are really fond of Japanese popular culture, the music, the movies, the animes, the online games and so on. Yes. Now that is because of the very well developed, say marketing industry in Japan, and also I must congratulate the Japanese artists for producing those attractive, performances. But then I won't worry too much about it, though. I mean, the impact of those on China is very limited because there are several things that we realize. For instance, those popular culture are not dealing with what we call the fine arts of Japan. It's only the very popular ones. So it doesn't mean that the people who like those popular culture would understand Japanese history, Japanese culture very well.
Okay.
It won't.
Yeah, I see your point.
I see your
point.
Impact is very limited.
Yeah, well, I don't know whether it is a totally bad thing or good. I think it is good that people get to know another culture, so long as it is not in excess. But I do want to go very quickly to Professor Chu for the situation in South Korea. And I don't have much time for this, but it's important to mention that Tuesday marks International Memorial Day for Comfort Women. We know that in China and South Korea, this was a very painful history, and some of these victims are still alive. So South Korean President Moon Jae-in on Tuesday declared August the 14th a Memorial Day for Korean comfort women. How much is this an issue standing in the way of Japan-South Korean relations?
Well, this is not just limited to South Korea and Japan relationship, since it regards the comfort women issue that involved not only South Korea, but also North Korea, China, Taiwan, all of Southeast Asia, as well as Australia and Holland. So in that sense, the comfort women issue is a global women's issue. And so first, I think I need to clarify that very clearly. And so to move forward, however, in Japan, one of the problems that the Japanese are facing is that the comfort women issue has strictly been linked to only Korea. So in other words, the other countries' comfort women issues has been erased from the Japanese public's awareness. And this is something that I think that the Japanese have to really confront and start educating their people to really raise the awareness as a human rights issue as well as a women's issue to move forward in the region as well as on the global stage.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Many thanks to Cookie Chu, Professor of Media and Cultural Studies at the Sophia University in Tokyo, and to Professor Yue-Him Tan from Macalester College in Minnesota in the U.S. And you have been watching The Point with me, Lucia Chein. I'll take a short break, and when I come back, Brazil celebrated its first National Chinese Immigration Day on Wednesday. What's the story of Chinese or Asian immigration in Brazil? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Chinese calligraphy, dragon dances, dumplings and other touches of China filled the streets of Brazil's major cities on Wednesday as the country celebrated its first National Chinese Immigration Day. Brazil's President Michel Temer signed a law on June the 26th to celebrate the day every August the 15th. Also the date China and Brazil established diplomatic relations in 1974. So what's the story of Chinese immigration to Brazil, and why marking the occasion with a national day. And as relations strengthen and trade grows between the two countries, what can we expect next? Joining me from Shanghai is Professor Haibin Niu, Deputy Director of the Center for American Studies at the Shanghai Institute for International Studies. From Paris, Lucia Chein, a Chinese-Brazilian advertising professional. And in the studio, Joaquin Gallego, an Argentinian-Spanish lawyer and expert in Latin America. Welcome to all of you. Professor Niu in Shanghai, let me go to you first. Now, the first Chinese, or the first waves of Chinese immigrants, I must say, arrived in Brazil in the early 19th century. It's estimated that Chinese-Brazilian population stand around 160,000, second only to Japanese in terms of Asian immigrants in that country. Why designating such a holiday now, or rather, why did it take so long?
I think it took a lot of time to transfer the decision from a local one from the São Paulo city to the federal government decision, and also from a Congress bill to a national law. I think during this process, about 1 year, I think the country needs to build a strong trans-political parties consensus on the importance of the Chinese immigration.
My question was really,
in the country.
My question was really, Brazilians have been living in or emigrating to Brazil since early 19th century. Why is only now such a day dedicated to the Chinese-Brazilian population?
I think at the very beginning, they are the laborers for the tea and for the road building. But now I think the importance of the Chinese immigrants in Brazil has been improved a lot, especially in the context of the rapid development of the bilateral economic partnership.
Now, what's the significance, you think?
So I think this, yeah.
Yeah, what do you think is the significance of making the celebration into a law, a national day? What does the gesture mean to the Chinese community in Brazil, especially given the global trend in many countries to kind of turning to close their borders to immigrants and refugees, as we have seen in other American countries?
Yes, it delivered a lot of positive messages in the current international context, especially the United States and Europe. They are very sensitive to accepting the more refugees or immigrants. But Brazil give us a very different story. It's quite open, and also to see the positive role of the foreign immigrants. I think this is a very positive message for a globalized world.
Yeah, and it seems that they are committed to stay that way for the foreseeable future. Many thanks to Professor Niu joining us from Shanghai. Let me go to Lucia, who is joining us from Paris. She is a Chinese-Brazilian. She was born in Brazil, and over the years, her parents made sure that she was able to get hold of both cultures, both Chinese and Brazilian culture, as she was growing up. So, Lucia, welcome to the show. Are you excited about such a day being dedicated to people like you, and what kind of difference do you think it's going to make?
Well, I'm very excited that it's officially having this Immigration Day. It shows that the Chinese community really has a way in Brazil, and it took a lot of time, but it's finally there, so I'm very happy.
What do you think this law wants to change or bring to the Brazilian society? When you were growing up, did you feel there are unnecessary barriers between you and your peers? Did you think there needs to be greater awareness or understanding of Chinese as a culture, as a people?
Actually, no. When I was growing up in Brazil, a Brazilian culture actually it embraced a lot of immigrants, not only Chinese, not only Asian, but also European. So there's a lot of different people from different cultures that are living together. Of course, maybe there will be some jokes, but nothing really racist. Everything is the same. So when I was growing up in Brazil, I felt like home.
Mm-hmm. How did your parents try to promote your Chinese background while keeping your Chinese identity while growing up in a Brazilian environment? Was that easy?
Wasn't very easy because when I was growing up in Brazil, actually I was surrounded by Brazilian culture and the language. I remember my father trying to teach us about traditional culture from China, but it didn't last very long. He used to build little classrooms after dinner to teach us the language, but it didn't last long, so he finally decided to send me and my little sister to China to really learn the culture there.
Yeah. So what kind of difference? Do you think that making August the 15th a National Chinese Immigration Day, do you think this is going to make a difference for the people to better understand Chinese culture, or for people like you to have a maybe more easy environment to get close to Chinese culture?
Yes, I think definitely will be a plus to let the Chinese community in Brazil to be more open about their culture. I think Chinese people, we have a more discreet and peaceful way of showing things. Maybe it will make us more open to show what we have to the Western side of the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Lucia Chein, joining us from Paris, giving her personal testimony as a Chinese Brazilian. And now let me get to my guest here in the studio. Joaquin, what has foreign immigrants brought to Brazil or Latin America in general? We don't hear so much about them, right? But they have worked very hard. What do we know about them, or what should we know about them?
I think the main contribution they had is diversity. As we know, all the countries in the American continent have been built until a certain point by migrant workers, and Chinese, they play a significant role, especially in countries like Brazil, Peru, and Venezuela. And we do hear about them often. For example, we have the case of Felipe Wu, who was an Olympic medalist for Brazil, also William Wu and Mrs. Lee, who are part of the Congress for the city of Sao Paulo. So they are playing an important role every day in the Brazilian society.
So what is the point of designating this Chinese Immigration Day, making it an official holiday for Brazil? What is the message? Who wants to send this message to whom?
I think it's a very beautiful sign from the whole Brazilian society to acknowledge the contributions that Chinese migrants have in Brazil, the spirit they brought, their values, and their entrepreneurial spirit.
Let's take a look at the current relationship between China and Latin American countries, and China and Brazil, of course. Chinese investment there reached a 7-year high of almost $25 billion last year. That's according to Brazilian Planning Ministry. Between 2012 to 2016, Chinese companies invested more than twice as much as U.S. counterparts in Brazil. That is in comparison with data from the U.S. Department of Commerce. What is the Brazilian attitude towards Chinese investment, which has been growing so fast, so rapidly over the past few years?
No, of course, the Brazilian government is very happy to receive all kinds of Chinese investment. The President Temer has been eager to mention over and over again the desire to receive even more investment from China. The only issue that worries them is the fact that Chinese investment is mainly focused on the extractive industry, on raw materials. So I think the Brazilian government is waiting to, or wishing to improve this kind of investment to a technological sector.
And China also became Brazil's main trading partner in 2008, and Brazil's top foreign investor in 2010. At the signing ceremony in June, President Temer added, I mean, at the ceremony to make the August the 15th a national holiday. President Temer of Brazil said that China now is Brazil's largest trading partner, and the two countries have seen extensive cooperation in many fields. We also cement our dialogue mechanism under the BRICS framework. So what does the holiday mean in terms of businesses and political relations between the two sides?
I think that the holiday is a perfect excuse for politicians and businessmen to meet and discuss these kind of topics. For example, investment, the strategic relation that China has with Brazil, the importance of China not only in Brazil but also in South America and Latin America, and the holiday, the fact that the Brazilian government sets a specific day to commemorate the Chinese migrants is the perfect scenario to discuss these kind of topics.
Let's not forget, finally, that the kind of economic scenario we're looking at, developing countries are really experiencing a runaway devaluation of their currencies. We've seen that in Turkey, we've seen that in South Africa, and the Brazilian economy is also not doing. So how important is greater unity among BRIC countries at this particular moment?
It is of great importance, because we have to remember that Brazil is not only a member of BRICS that unites with Russia, China, India, South Africa, but it's also a member of the Mercosur, that is a bloc in South America. And the unity for Brazil is important, not only in South America, but also outside. And China is one of, or if not the most important global ally that Brazil has at this moment.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Many thanks to Joaquin Gallego, an Argentinian-Spanish lawyer and expert in Latin America. And that is it for this edition of The Point with me, Lucia Chein. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.